Former Israeli Prime Minister Ariel Sharon passed away on Saturday after a very long illness. He's written for our op-ed page in the past. You can go to WSJ.com/opinion for some excerpts from some of those pieces. But now I'm very pleased to welcome Global View columnist Bret Stephens to talk about Mr. Sharon and his legacy. Bret, he's been described in various ways, a complex man. What in your mind was his greatest achievement?
Well, the one way I wouldn't describe him is complex. Ariel Sharon had a single-minded obsession, which was achieving the security of the Jewish people in the state of Israel, and it was with him from the very beginning when he was a young boy growing up on an agricultural collective, when he fought in Israel's War of Independence, when he performed brilliantly as a tank general in the Six-Day War, and then when he really saved Israel from military catastrophe in 1973. And that typified his entire career. Now, he was imaginative, he was tactically bold and brilliant, and he was strategically decisive, although he tacked ideologically one way or that.
That's why I said complex,
But he had a
Bret.
fixed object in life.
He had a fixed object, but yet again, this is the man who pulled out of Gaza, correct? The settlements?
Well, this is a man who judged in 2005 that Israel's partial occupation or presence in the Gaza Strip had become more of a strategic and political liability for Israel than it was a territorial advantage. Now, of course, he went into a near comatose state just months after Israel's withdrawal, so we'll never know how he would have dealt with the consequences of that decision.
I want to read you a quote on U.S.-Israel relations from an op-ed that he wrote for us back in the late 80s, and I quote, "A friendly superpower such as the U.S., and not just a small and ancient people like the Israeli nation, should look beyond the horizon, 50 years to 100 years ahead. It is for the U.S. to comprehend that Israel's very existence is the best guarantee for the democratization of its Arab neighbors from the Persian Gulf to the Mediterranean." Bret, asking you a hypothetical, but how do you think, given that statement, Mr. Sharon would have dealt with the Obama administration and their involvement in the Middle East today?
Well, you know, Sharon spent more of his life in politics than he did in the military, and I was the editor of the Jerusalem Post when he was prime minister. I met him a number of times. He was a politically very astute person. Very different, by the way, I should say, from Benjamin Netanyahu. Sharon was not a master rhetorician, and he knew how to keep his mouth shut. It was Sharon. He would keep his mouth shut and he would act rather than open his mouth and then not act. So I suspect that the Obama administration may have actually found him a somewhat more congenial prime minister to work with, but we'll never know.
How did you find him personally? Was he courteous, funny, a hardliner?
Oh,
what were those interactions
it's funny because you know, he had this reputation as the so-called butcher of Beirut. He was never. He certainly didn't order the massacre of Palestinians or know of the massacre of Palestinians in 1982. In person, he was a very warm human being. He was easy to get along with. If he liked you, you sensed it. He was expansive. Interviews with Sharon could go on for a very long time. Of course, he was a large man
a man of girth
in many ways. But you know, let's not forget that this man of girth encircled the Egyptian Third Army in one of the most brilliant military maneuvers in history. So you can give him his girth.
Okay, and we'll also direct everybody to the editorial today, remembering him. A Global View columnist, Bret Stephens.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.